Today we are at the Mountain American Museum of Ancient Life at Thanksgiving Point, located in Salt Lake City, Utah. So let's head inside and see what we find. The first thing you see when you walk in is this display of Gorgosaurus and Othnielia rex, two of the Cretaceous creatures that we have, with our great Tyrannosaur Gorgosaurus in the back there with this little ornithopod Othnielia rex, this little small bipedal plant-eating dinosaur. As you see, our Gorgosaurus here has a great crest, a little more arched over the eye than, say, a T-Rex. Still a Tyrannosaur with those two giant fingers, thick, powerful jaws with openings at the bottom of the jaw. Between the nasal and the orbit, or the eye, you have those two openings there for jaw muscles. Long, robust teeth, good for piercing and crushing. These little ornithopods would have been snacks for creatures like this. Little more smaller, longer back leg, or longer lower part of the leg than the upper part of the leg, indicating speed, meant for getting away, not necessarily ambush or hiding. These were definitely runners, not hiders. And if we look up, we can actually go ahead and see they have a massive Quetzalcoatlus, one of the largest flying thing to ever exist. Huge beak, very hollow bones, standing about the height of a giraffe. These things would have been absolutely massive and could have flown around the globe. So here we actually have a prep lab in here. I was actually not expecting them to have a prep lab. I'm very surprised by this, but right here we do have a cast of a Utah raptor foot, but we do have some real cervical vertebra of some kind of sauropod, Barry's cervical vertebra. Don't know what kind of sauropod Barry is. Allosaurus skull in the back. They got some other real things that they're working on in the back. This is a very cool thing that they're having a actual prep lab here. So here we actually start at the beginning of time, where we have some of the weirdest early organisms, jellyfish, the Precambrian. We get banded iron formation, one of the most important trace fossils. 1,800 million years. There's a worldwide deposit of iron alternating with bands of chert. So they would stack up, and it's very important because it actually indicates that there was oxygen in the environment. So we know that the oxygen was that the environment was oxygenated. We get some of these very, very primitive jellyfish, things like that. We see raindrops, very rare things. We see some trace fossils from very little creature-looking things. We come through here, we get some of these, we get the early Precambrian stromolites along the Precambrian coastline, 2 billion years. So these are like weird bulbs of like algae pretty much that build up and spread out. And this actually is like one of our first bioecosystems. Then we come through here and we start to see all kinds of weird creatures. This is the Utah Cambrian. We have beautiful ripple marks here. This is a beautiful example of what you would see in a beach environment or some kind of coastal environment, where the waves would come. Since these are symmetrical, you would know it's a beach. They would come, they'd wave, and they'd come back, and they would leave ripples. And then here we start to see some of the very early creatures with sea urchins and weird sponges, things like that. You start to see crinoids, those appear. Trilobites become incredibly common, especially in Utah. You start to see early jellyfish and things like that, very little creatures, and terms of what time has. You start to see those trilobites and really weird giant sea scorpion things. Well, this isn't a sea scorpion, but it does have these weird pincers that it would scoop up trilobites and things with and crush them. With this trilobite up here, I've actually seen somebody try to make a life model of one, so it's actually kind of funny. We have some more banded iron, brachiopods, crinoids. These are more crinoids. This is stromalite. This is what the stromalite fossils would look like. These are very important ecological fossils. So you can tell that the environment would look something like this, with crinoids and sea lilies, stromalites, sponges, trilobites, cephalopods are very rampant. You have these long squids, nautiloids, things like that. Sponges, I don't remember if I said that. Corals appear. These very weird, this is a Devonian tidal pond here with some trilobites and ammonites in there. You come here, you start to see other kinds of trilobites. They get these big bulbs on their head and things like that. That's a good indicator of predation, is those big bulbous ones. You do get some weirder skull-shaped ones where you actually start to see that they become filter feeders, bottom feeders. Come around here, show this part. They become herbivores. They start to eat like kelp and weird things like that appear. Sponges, they start to eat those too. Then we get some of the really weird animals. Crinoids are up there too, brachiopods, bivalves, gaptolites, trilobites, of course. You start to see cephalopods like this ammonite right here. This very beautiful ammonite recreation right there. You start to see euryptids like this giant sea scorpion here. Sharks kind of appear, not really, but you do start to see the first fish. Very, very early fish. They look very weird. You see Dunkleostes, jawless fish appear first, usually is what is seen upon. Actually, show this giant sea scorpion creation here. This could actually very well be the real size of a giant sea scorpion. Sharks, jawless fish, and jawed fish like our Dunkleostes appear later, pre-dinosaur. Jawless fish, again, surfing on the bottom, picking up weird bioorganisms in the mud and things. So you start to see the rise of ray-fin and lobe-finned fish, like sharks and things here. You see these giant jawless fish. That's a giant jawless fish fossil. You start to see ray-finned fish, weird, very flat fish that appear. These are very beautiful examples of probably, if I had to guess, actually I think these are some from Italy. Some of these are from Italy. That's very interesting. But these ones here are from the Green River Formation in Wyoming and Utah. We do get those there. If we come through here, I guess this is about fossil fuels and what builds up. So you get things like petrified wood, seashells, lots of plants and swampy materials is actually what oil is made of. Oil is not actually made of dinosaur bone. It is made of old, very old swampy environment materials like tree bark and ferns and muddy plants and things like that get built up over time and decompose under the ground. They're usually trapped in sandstones and things like that. They're trapped in sandstones and things like that encase them. But here we start to see the Pennsylvanian swamps when creatures first come onto land. You get these giant arthropods or giant millipedes and things like that. You start to see the Carboniferous, the rise of plants and things like that. Carbon in the air, hence the Carboniferous. Then we start to get a lot of the very weird primitive creatures. This seems out of place, but this is a sauropod skull of some kind. I don't think this belongs here, in my opinion. This should be in the Jurassic era. This is a Plateosaurus, but this doesn't look like a Plateosaurus skull. This looks more like a Diplodocus or Barosaurus or a Podosaurus. This also appears to be dinosaur. That shouldn't be in this part quite yet. But you start to see a lot of creatures in the sea rise. Ammonites get bigger, they stay around. You get giant ichthyosaurs, which are those creatures that are dolphin-like. They have those big eyes, huge fins, giant flip tails. They become massive. You get these giant, weird, in-between stingray, sharks, squids are still very abundant. Here you see these giant Lepidotus, this giant prehistoric fish with those scales that are covered in enamel, so they preserve very well. Giant, not crinoid, they're cephalopods and ammonites and nautiloids. This is where we start to get to the Mesozoic. We should be in the Triassic period now. You have little aquatic reptiles, ichthyosaurs, squids, shrimps are a thing. You get sea stars. But as creatures come onto the land, actually, before we go that, here's this very beautiful ammonite with these very beautiful suture patterns as it has fossilized. As creatures start to get on the land, we get synapsids first. So you have like little lystrosaurs. Actually, it should be going the other way. So you have the creatures that first come on their land, the theropods, these very weird, freakish-looking basically amphibians. You start to see those. They come onto land, their legs are out, they're sprawled out so they can support their massive body. They have these very thick, robust skulls that help preserve, that are really surprisingly good at preserving for Triassic. So you get these that come onto land. Their eyes are still on their head. Their nostrils are still there. They're synapsids. They have pretty much a solid skull except for nasal and eyes. Then you start to come over here where you get the change into other parts of this. Is actually the Permian, not the Triassic. That would be the Mesozoic. So it would be the Triassic. This is Permian. So you start to see things like Dimetrodon, thick, robust skull. You have this sail that was likely for absorbing sun rays to help regulate body temperature. Very powerful jaws, would have been a big predator of its time. Then we get Dicynodont over here, similar to the Lystrosaurus in the same family. Actually, if you look at it closely, they also have these saber kind of teeth, those giant elongated what would be canines in mammals. These are actually technically proto-mammals. This falling into the Lystrosaurus family, becoming a similar species of Lystrosaurus. If we come here, we get the late Triassic with some of these very small marine lizards that you would see. We're following the Triassic onwards, and you still have these crinoid gardens, trilobites, cephalopods, things like that. You start to see the dinosaurs originate. This is a Plateosaurus skull. Those very sculpted teeth. Very primitive teeth too. Then you have Eoraptor, which is from the middle Triassic. An early ornithopod. No, early, not ornithopod, theropod. Same with Herrerasaurus here. So this would be kind of your Coelophysis stand-in for that generic smaller theropod. Wrists proned in, legs under their hips, saurosuchian hips. Herrerasaurus being the largest predatory dinosaur of its time. Beautiful example. I'm really happy that they have this. Again, you have that saurosuchian hip, theropod, very, very early theropod. These giant, robust, or not really giant, robust, but looks almost dromaeosaurid in a way. It looks like a very primitive dromaeosaur. It's very surprising that they kind of kept this body model. Snake-like neck, very long tail. Here's some more examples of those oceans during the Permian. It's a very all over the place exhibit here. Have cephalopods, fish, sponges, corals, brachiopods, bivalves, sea lilies would be all over the place. Same thing here. You get those upper Paleozoic fossils. You get crinoids, leaves, sponges, brachiopods, bivalves, crinoids, shrimp are here, snails are here, cephalopods are here, mammal-like reptiles like Lycrosuchus is there, one of those gorgonopsid kind of creatures. Same thing over here with these mammal-like reptiles like Oleocephalodon, giant things like that too, like Parlosaur skull there, with these giant, thick, diapsid skulls. A lot of them have these weird tusks. Don't really know why. Herbivorous here, very smushed head. Beautiful example of the Permian and Triassic. This is where you actually start to see a lot of the early build of animals appear with the same kind of leg and hip structure. Legs under the hips is very successful. You have the big skull. Skulls are very different. Those usually differentiate. Arm bones are very consistent for their time. Radius, ulna, humerus, scapula would be your shoulder. And you have your collarbone tends to be the like consistent. But now we're entering the Jurassic Hall, and the first thing you see if you look up here, actually I think you can get upstairs somehow, is some kind of what appears to be macronarian sauropod, if I had to guess, because of the way its head is arched and the shape of its head. Diplodocus tend to have elongated faces. Macronarians tend to have rounded faces, so I'm going to guess this is some kind of macronarian dinosaur here. But when we get upstairs, I guess we can talk about that a little more. But here we have the Torvosaurus, your bruiser of the Jurassic. When dinosaurs start to get a little more crazy, you start to get things like this. We've seen this before. Giant opening in the side of the jaw for good muscle attachment. Very thick jaw, very robust teeth, like T-Rex. This would have been the true T-Rex of its time with usable arms, elongated arms and things like that. Then we come over here and we have our stegosaurs. We have this beautiful thagomizer here that you can see parts of it there. That is the thing on the end of its tail that would have been used for defense. You have the very robust body, short front arms, elongated back legs. Likely said it could rear. You have these thick plates on its back. You have its neck here. This is actually a juvenile stegosaurus. Getting steep here. Very small. It does have its plates. Juveniles do have their plates, which could actually indicate that the plates are not a form of sexual display, but could have also possibly been used as that, because all of them have it and juveniles have it. If we turn around here, we have some kind of, this is actually Supersaurus, this massive behemoth here. One of the largest sauropods in North America, if not the largest sauropod in North America. It is part of the, I don't remember if it's a titanosaur or if it is a diplodocid or diplodocid, but here we have Gargoylosaurus. You have the thick osteoderms, the early, so these guys and stegosaurs are actually closely related in the eopod. But these went with the more defense. Stegosaurs went with the more spiky. Very thick tail here. No bulb on the end like ankylosaurs, but these are very early primitive ankylosaurs. If we come over here, you can actually see a lot of the osteoderms around its neck would have been thicker because that is one of the places that it would need. Osteoderms on its neck, giant sheet osteoderm over its back hips. And this is mainly the first section. So here we have what appears to be, if I'm going to look at its skull, a diplodocid, maybe an apatosaur. Can I tell by the toe claw? Probably an apatosaur. Here, for some reason, they have this section closed off. That's very sad. It looks like they're doing work, but they have an Allosaurus, which looks very new. And they have a Ceratosaurus right there, which also looks like it's going to be in a new area of Jurassic predators. I'm curious if this museum is a little newer then. But yeah, we're going to actually head up this little ramp here so we can see some more of these Jurassic creatures. This massive diplodocid of some kind. We have our flying pterosaurs that appear for the first time in, well, they don't appear for the first time, but they're there primarily in the Jurassic. They've become very prevalent in the Jurassic. We get up here to our macronarian of some sorts. This being a Brachiosaurus, I was right, it being a macronarian. This is actually the first Brachiosaurus we've seen in this entire trip, even though they're surprisingly prevalent. Actually, they're surprisingly limited during the Jurassic, and I'm curious if that has something to do with their environment, them possibly being in a more mountainous environment. I actually completely missed this. Rhamphorhynchus right here, one of those very early pterosaurs from the Jurassic period. You see that fourth digit is very elongated. That became its wings. Membrane, you can actually see where the membrane was preserved. Very beautiful specimen right here. But if we turn around here, we can actually see Gastonia of the early Cretaceous period. These are the massive ankylosaur survivals, the ones that survive between the Jurassic and the Cretaceous. Ankylosaurs survive and go into the Cretaceous. These are the first ones that you see that would have lived alongside things like Utah raptor. You can see they still have the plate over their hips, no bony club yet, giant protruding spikes primarily. Show this giant Brachiosaurus head somehow. But yeah, this is what your Macronaria looks like. You can see it is a little different than our Diplodocus and things like that. Face is a lot less elongated. Nasal cavity on the top of the head. Eye holes still has the diapsid holes because they are diapsids. But this is a beautiful ramp area. So here we come to their Cretaceous Hall. The first thing you see here is one of those very first ceratopsians, Psittacosaurus here, as this very prominent jugal bones or jaw bones. No horns yet. Those are a very primitive trait. Here you also have some more Psittacosaurus, meaning parrot lizards. They're called parrot lizards because they look like a parrot a little bit, and are parrot sized. You have a little bit of the beak there. I can just reach right over that. Very, very small. Those are very early ceratopsians. Here we get what appears to be a dromaeosaur, probably velociraptor if I had to guess. No, this is just Dromaeosaurus, the fast-running lizard from the late Cretaceous, 76 million years ago. Fast, agile predator, elongated fingers, most likely for grappling. You have the famous Dromaeosaurus jaw there with those teeth that kind of come up. The famous Dromaeosaurus kill claw, Saurosuchian hip. But this is actually a very interesting depiction because this is the Saurosuchian hip before it becomes looking like the Ornithischian hip, because for some reason, dromaeosaurs become ornithischian in hip structure. I have no idea why that is, but they do. If we come over here, we get the Inagura, which is the old devil, which is one of the early Cretaceous pterosaurs. Was a fish hunter. You can tell by the shape of its teeth, very elongated and pointed instead of serrated for grabbing slippery prey and piercing. A lot more in the front. If we come here, this appears to be some kind of Archaeopteryx, which should be in the Jurassic section if you ask me. Very dusty top too. Or some kind of like early primitive Paravian dinosaur. This might not exactly be Archaeopteryx. It looks like Archaeopteryx. It's in the Archaeopteryx stand. So I'm going to guess it's probably supposed to be Archaeopteryx. This appears actually in the Jurassic period, not the Cretaceous, in Germany. Ornithischian to kind of, or Saurosuchian to kind of Ornithischian hip. Here we have Pachycephalosaurus wyomingus, if I had to guess, the thick-headed lizard. So you have these very thick, bony skull top here with some spikes here. You can see this this is a very beautiful up-close example of an Ornithischian hip. You have it's a lot more separated there, and it's that shape. These are some of the very few two-legged non-theropod dinosaurs. They're actually closely related to ceratopsians, but they have these thick skulls, and the neck bones would have lined up so that they could bash heads against each other or prey, most likely for competition between mating rights, food, territory, location, things like that. Here, if we turn around, we have our Chasmosaur, or the chasm lizard. It's probably named after the giant chasm in the back of its frill there. The namesake of the Chasmosaurian dinosaurs, or the Chasmosaurian group. was most likely solitary, like Triceratops. Big old beak on the front of its face that could probably bite through bone. Giant muscle attachment capability for here. Ceratopsians had surprisingly powerful bites for their tiny size. Or not their tiny size, but for their skull shape, they had a lot of room for muscle attachment. You have this dental battery here. You get their teeth whenever they line up so that they can grind away at ferns and things like that. This is actually this is one of the smaller ceratopsian species, considering. But if we come over here, oh, I know I'm going to get a comment about this one. We have the Suchomimus, or the crocodile mimic, hence the crocodilian face, the very elongated Fiscivorian teeth. No, it is not gone. We have no cranial remains of Suchomimus, but we have cranial or skull remains of Chrysosaurus. I think it's Chrysosaurus or something like that. So the idea that Suchomimus might be Chrysosaurus, because Chrysosaurus is only known from skull remains, while Suchomimus is known from post-cranial remains, is so that the idea that they might be the same dinosaur is out there, but they are both still valid as of right now. Here, before we get into these big boys, we have a cycad, are simple seed plants with male and female cells in separated cone-like structures. This is one of the very early cycads or tree kind of structures. Coming back over this Suchomimus, so we're not showing random strangers on the camera. We have our beautiful Chasmosaurus, but if we come to this other side, we actually start to see some of the other creatures that appeared during the Cretaceous. Here we have the Confuciusornis, or one of these very early bird dinosaurs. I think this one still had teeth. I don't remember off the top of my head. This is definitely, if Archaeopteryx is under debate, if this is bird or dinosaur, this thing is just, no one would agree. I personally think this one is more bird-like than dinosaur-like, but it is still a dinosaur because it does have a tail and teeth. Here we have a pterosaur of some kind. Tapajarian lineage is what it would seem like to me. Giant back, robust head crest, very sharp beak, most likely aquatic then, like storks. Giant area to lighten the skull in the middle. Tiny orbit, surprisingly. They have very tiny eye structures. Here we get the early Cretaceous with the Utahraptor, the largest dromaeosaur. Still a dromaeosaur, has the giant sickle claw here, giant hand claws, very good jaw muscles, likely a pack hunter like other dromaeosaurs. Well, actually that's still up for debate, but if I had to guess, Utahraptor might have still been a pack hunter, hunting things like our Edmontosaur. No, Edmontosaur wouldn't be there yet, if I'm not mistaken. I think Edmontosaur is late Cretaceous, not early Cretaceous like Utahraptor. So it actually would have been probably Parasaurolophus or Griposaurus. Most likely not Edmontosaurus, but maybe, yes, 65 million years is when Edmontosaurus is there. So I don't think they would be there, but you do have this beautiful Edmontosaurus. If we turn around here and you can pan up, we have the two tyrant lizard kings themselves, Tyrannosaurus rex, two massive ones, possibly male and female, cohabitating, standing on this Edmontosaurus here, this poor Edmontosaurus, being depicted as a prey animal. Giant space for muscle attachment on the jaws, which I always go over, giant robust teeth for crushing. This could be a mating pair that is going in to do some kind of mating ritual. These could be competitors competing for this dead Edmontosaur. It's really difficult to tell from just looking at the bones here. But these are two massive tyrannosaurs going in for competition. If we come over here, we have Thescelosaurus, or the wonderful lizard, is a small ornithischian, bird-hipped dinosaur. The name means wonderful lizard because the first fossils were surprisingly complete, giving scientists a rare and detailed look at this little herbivore. These these tiny ornithopod dinosaurs kind of pulling up for the Camptosaurus and Dryosaurus of the Jurassic, showing that their lineage survives. Then we get to the Triceratops, the three-horned face, It's a powerful herbivore, massive frill, completely filled in. The only ceratopsian, as of right now, if I'm not mistaken, to have its frill completely filled in. This one might actually be a Pororis because it has this slight dip in the horn there. Could still be a Horridus. A lot of difficulty to telling that. Giant, robust face here. Beak that could just pierce and shear. Giant dental battery there good for ripping apart plants. Then we come to our Struthiomimus. We actually get the labeled Struthiomimus. Another one of our omnivorous ostrich-like ornithomimids. They do have these gastralia, which I'm glad that they included because I think most dinosaurs would most likely have a gastralia. Elongated snake-like neck, beaked face. I guess that's dying, or maybe it's just too bright in here. Beaked face, showing good for herbivory and carnivory, meaning that they're omnivores, most likely eating small lizards, eggs, and plants. Up here, we have a pteranodon. This actually appears to be a female pteranodon. You can tell because the crest on the back of its head is not elongated out. It is very rounded and small. That fourth finger is elongated. Well, actually, it should be more like that. Your fourth finger is elongated with that web membrane that would have most likely been connected to their ankles of some kind to be able to get them off the ground. I don't think they have thumbs, so I think it would be their pinkies. Here we have forms of evolution. Very interesting here. We have hominid gorillas here, or not, I guess they're not hominid, but they're, what would be the, I think it is hominid. I think that's what it is. You have this beautiful Archaeopteryx, the famous one from Germany. You have this, it says brain case, but there's no brain case here. You have this tiny ornithopod dinosaur. Same with birds up here. This would be the skeleton of a harp eagle. So you can see a lot of the similarity in the bones with all of these past the gorilla being directly related. The gorilla not being directly related from a lineage of these guys. So it's kind of interesting that they're here. But hey, but yeah, you have this beautiful harp eagle, Archaeopteryx, and ornithopod dinosaur here. And I guess this is going over the different kinds of evolution things that they would have. So here we actually have the Cretaceous oceans with one of our biggest turtles known to date, the Archelon. Turtles are so weird. I guess this thing's kind of dying. They are diapsids, yet they only have synapsid number of holes with their eyes and their nose, which is very interesting. Then we get over here with Tylosaurus, this massive thing here. This tail keeps going. Closely related to possibly monitor lizards or snakes. A bit of a snake body or snake spine, but monitor lizard body. The skull is very interesting. These very robust skulls. Aquatic top dogs in the Western Interior Seaway. You have this giant Plasiotisaurus, which appears to be some kind of cephalopod, ammonite related. You have this smaller mosasaur here, which is Childastes, attacking some of these cephalopods, it seems like. Very funny display here with this. So you get the smallest mosasaur with the largest tylosaur here, the large tylosaur here. Very awesome skull. We get some more little aquatic turtles. Then we get a Elasmosaur starting at its head here. You follow its spine all the way to the body. We get some very long brachylites here with these giant cephalopods. But this Elasmosaur sitting right above this, geez, what is a sawfish face, I guess. Elasmosaurs would have lived in a bit of a darker, murkier waters, not necessarily deep ocean. Very robust bodies, surprisingly small flippers in terms of their body size, but still very powerful flippers. Not very fast swimmers, so they likely would have sat down and held their head out until a fish went in there and they'd snap it shut and they'd move their head around. Here, I think we have, are these bulldog fish or is this something else? Yes, Xenactinus, also known as the bulldog fish. These are massive predatory fish that existed in the Western Interior Seaway, if I'm not mistaken, late Cretaceous, 70 million years, some of the Western Interior Seaway. These are Paleozotus, which are some of the smaller fish than the bulldog fish. This thing was a big bully, similar to a bulldog. Its face is kind of mushed in with some of that bad attitude that a bulldog is, I guess, famous for. I don't think bulldogs are really famous for having a bad attitude. I think that's like pit bulls, but that's a completely different discussion. These things would have been vicious predators, definitely heavily carnivorous. You can tell by their teeth. Elongated, very sharp Fiscivorian teeth. Then as we turn around here, we get something that is very important. We get crab fossils. Crab fossils are very important because they can tell us like beach fronts, ocean bottoms, things like that. Very interesting fossils, and we look back here at our Archelon. So then the Mesozoic comes to the end. You have the KPG extinction, the asteroid strikes the Earth, ash clouds everywhere, fire, brimstone, cats and dogs living together in perfect harmony. Hopefully I don't get copyright for that line. You get the Green River Formation again here. You get a lot of post-dinosaur material, aquatic marine creatures. You start to see ecosystems reemerge, fish reappear. You get massive garfish. You see little birds here in the mud. Palm fronds are a thing, giant stingrays. You see a lot of different fish here. Same here. You do see alligators. This is actually an alligator, which is very interesting. Part of a stingray, a little bit of a crayfish, a lily pad, very interesting. A lot of plants and a bat and bugs. You start to see ecosystems reappear. Then we get to the Cenozoic kind of post-dinosaur. One of the first things, actually I want to show this little three-toed early horse off. These would have fallen into the bottom of lakes, became not petrified but fossilized. But the early creatures, you do see dinosaurs try to make a rise. This is Diatrema, which is a terror bird here. These ruled North and South America until Smilodons came along and ran them into extinction into South America. But you do see giant terror birds reappear, or not, well, reappear, but appear and try to take back the dinosaur lineage. You see Uniotherums, Brontotherums. We've seen these before. You get little Smilodectes over. Where's the Smilodectes? Oh, up in the tree. Little hominid kind of weird thing like that. You get the Pytriophysis right over there with those elongated incisors. These here, again, are more closely related to horses than rhinos, but they are kind of an in-between. The bulbs on their skulls indicating that they're not necessarily lineages of rhinos. You start to see Megacaris, which is a giant like warthog kind of thing with these massive tusks, killer pigs. You see the rise of, where's this cat at? You gotta find the cats, I guess. You do see the rise of like camels and early horses. In North America, you see turtles are still around right here. Lots of turtles are a thing. You see the rise of Smilodon and Smilodon relatives, saber-toothed cats, Xenosmilus, Thylacosmilus, Deinictis, Eusmilus. You see all these saber-toothed tigers here. I think one of these are over here. Hyenodons become a thing. These little mid-Tertiary period bodies resemble a modern hyenas. The animals would have been comfortable scavenging for food and actually hunting. You start to see early rhinos appear without horns, so you can see that the horn is not actually part of the skull. That would be made of keratin and like a hair-like material. Again, you see more of that early rhino. You start to see rabbits, lepidins, squirrels, little very small things are very abundant. You see very, very, very weird shovel-toothed mastodont there. They would scoop things up and use their tusks around trees and things like that. Very weird evolutionarily. You see early camels, camel-like relatives, very elongated legs, 2 toes like modern camels. You see Panochthes, which is similar to the Glyptodon. You just don't have the giant shell here. Kind of the mammal take on ankylosaurs and turtles. Very weird creatures. Then you get the actual Smilodon, which you have the famous saber-toothed tiger, elongated claws or teeth, canines, or elongated incisors. Sorry, not canines. Canines are in the kind of in-between area. Kind of retractable claws attacking our Glyptodon relative here. Very carnivorous. You get the Felis or cave lions and things like that, because North America actually had giant lion relatives bigger than the ones in Africa that went extinct. Here you get baby Elephas, which I guess is a very tiny, this time a tiny elephant species lived on island. Oh, so this is an example of island dwarfism. So this is a small elephant species that went onto an island and shrunk down to actually be able to survive on the island and not use all the resources. So this is a beautiful example of island dwarfism. That is not, I guess that's up there. That's up there. It's a little weird to display. You have Castordeus, which is giant beaver. You have those giant front teeth of the beaver, those incisors, and the canines are elongated on the Smilodon. The incisors are elongated on beavers. You have cheekbones that are open to help with food. Here we have the Coelodon, or the woolly rhinoceros. You have a dire wolf there. I do actually have two scaled skulls from fossil crates of these that I call the dueling Dantas, just because of the alliteration. So these are some of your first rhinos in North America, or in Siberia. You don't see the actual horn, but they would have horns. They could have, I think they had two horns actually. You have those dire wolves from the La Brea tar pits. Ooh. Then we come over here to our giant ground sloth. We get on this side. We've seen these guys before, giant robust bodies, huge digging claws, very slow lumbering creatures, very wide hips. They'd walk around, digging burrows, clamping down trees, possibly eating bark, berries, any plant material, ferns, grasses. Then over here, we get the new ruler of the sea, the Basilosaurus. This is one of those massive ancient whales. They have these very unique back teeth that are very weirdly shaped. Then they have these very sharp, elongated front teeth. These are some of your very early toothed whales. And in here, we actually get to the more modern day kind of thing. We have sawfish and swordfish and things like that. We have megalodons, or carcharodon, or Carcharodon megalodon is the true name. Please do not climb in the exhibit. I'm sure somebody has and gotten in trouble. These are the largest sharks to ever exist, rivaled in the sea by Leviathan whale. Here we have this tiny dolphin. Dolphins become very abundant. You have the giant front limbs, blowhole on the head, elongated front face, become very specialized in the way that they kill. If we come over here, we get a lot of shark teeth and things like that. Carcharodon, megalodon, you get lots of shark teeth that appear. Some of these are still in the modern day. I think I see some tiger shark and things like that. You see crabs, these are very abundant. Echinoderms, sea biscuits, sand dollars, those are very common fossilization materials on the East Coast. Elongated cephalopod shells. Actually, I don't think those are cephalopods. I think those might be some kind of crab shells that have been elongated and spiraled, or some kind. Then we get to the early humans. Okay, so we're at this display. I already know this museum now. Here we have the mastodon, where we get to learn the difference between the mastodon and the mammoth. Here we have the mastodon, a little less tusk, but very protruded, much more territorial, much more solitary. Non-grazers, they would have eaten more rough materials, barks, a lot less grass, berries, leaves, things like that. That's why their teeth look like that, but they're still giant mammoths. Then we get to this display. This display is actually really funny to me. I love this display. This is humanoids, early humanoids, likely an example of Clovis point on our woolly mammoth here. Elongated, very circular tusk. If you can see the teeth in there, they're a lot less sharper, a little more rounded in their edges. That's because they are grazers. But here we have humanoids hunting them, spears. You have one being crushed by the falling mammoth. Then I want to show this guy off. This guy is hilarious. If you look at this, he's stabbing up under his gut. This angle, the way he's looking, he's not aiming for that woolly mammoth. He's aiming for this guy. This guy's got murder on the mind. He's going to kill that guy with that giant stone. He is not aiming for that mammoth. That angle is just straight down to that guy. I think this is a very funny display. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but it is actually hilarious. And then we come over here to, I think, some of the last parts of our exhibit before the first mass extinction. We do see still some woolly mammoth hair because then you get permafrost, so they actually freeze. We have this elephant bird, and we have its egg right here. It's one of the largest bird eggs you have. But then we have this baby mammoth or mammoths here. No tusks yet. Very small, very elegant. These are some of the tiny creatures post-dinosaur.